Hello and welcome to JCTV's Spotlight on the Arts. It's a special feature of Mid-Missouri Art News, which a lot of you are tuned into now. Thank you for your viewership. Today is January 10th, a warm day actually for January, 45 degrees or maybe up to 50 by now, 2018 in the capital city of Jefferson City, Missouri. And today I have a special guest. I'm Rick Jey, inviting and looking forward to a conversation with Dan Bernskaetter of Lowman, Missouri. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Jay.
I'm truly excited to turn the spotlight on you today, Dan. And we always start off with, if you could please tell us a little bit about you and those highlights of your life that best describe Dan Bernskaetter.
Well, I was born here in Jefferson City and attended grade school at IC, parochial school, and Helias High School. Oh. Attended a year at Lincoln University. Later graduated from Tarkio College, going to night school. Yes. Worked 42 years with a telephone company, local. Under several different names as names changed, but still the same company. And I was a draftsman. I was a supervisor over many different groups in that years, and then I ended up engineer for most of my career.
I see. That is quite an extensive career, I guess, and also background. I know I've followed your art for a number of years here in the local area, and have always been impressed, and was so excited about having you as a guest here on Spotlight on the Arts. Well, if I may call you by your first name, Dan, can you share with us basically when and how you were first inspired to become a photographer, and what has inspired you to basically continue your interest in the art of photography?
Well, I guess I'd say that initially, as a youngster, I always enjoyed having a camera around. Of course, they were lots different than what we have today. Yes. But I was always the one that if there was a camera handy and there was a picture to be taken, I'd just grab and do it. And so actually how it started, where I thought, looking back now, I hadn't thought about it in years until you asked me about it, but right out of grade school, I went to a Cardinal baseball game and asked my mother if I could borrow her Brownie camera.
Ah, yes, so you want to hold that up for the folks?
Don't see too many of these. Matter of fact, young people probably have never seen one.
Exactly.
You have to actually look down the viewer to take the photo. It's and there isn't a whole lot of control you have over it. But
and you brought one of those first photographs, although it may not show up on camera. But
yeah, the very first photograph I took in 1965 with that Brownie at Old Sportsman's Park in St. Louis was of Lou Brock, who was always a hero of mine.
Yes.
And baseball. So anyway, that kind of, that was the first. Of course, that was a long cry. Then fast forward, I went through different smaller cameras. I had a Polaroid Swinger, which was a little black and white thing in high school, which I took when I joined the military. My basic training, I had it with me. And then time went on, I used more instant type cameras, and then in '79 we got ready to move to Arkansas for a couple of years, and I actually had an offer through my credit card company to buy this SLR camera with a couple lenses. Ooh. And so I bought it and took it with us to Arkansas, and so I started photographing the family and things in Arkansas to show people back home.
Sure, yes.
And that was kind of one step, and then fast forward to about 2006, when the digital SLRs first started coming out. I found a guy I worked with told me about a special on the Canon Digital Rebel, which was one of the first digitals. And I bought that camera with some Sigma lenses in time to take a trip to Yellowstone with my wife and granddaughter.
Yes.
And so that got it all started, because when I took those pictures and I later edited them when I got back home, and I thought, I need to figure out how to do this more often, because a lot of wildlife and landscapes beautiful, you know, because of Yellowstone and the trip out and back. So.
And your photography speaks well of the nature theme. I've always been so impressed on that basis. I had a Brownie Hawkeye. It was my first camera at 12 years old. I'll never forget. And so I still have it to this day. But I can imagine the photography does get into your blood, and I still enjoy that. Now, you spoke of the military. Did you end up with an MOS for photography, for shooting for the Army?
No, actually, I was a wheel vehicle mechanic for the Army.
Oh my, isn't that?
Yeah, totally nothing to do with it.
I see.
Of course, they pretty much pick that for you when you head in, and
Exactly.
I'd signed up. I was actually National Guard and full duty or active duty for about 6 years. I was here local in National Guard.
Oh, I see. That worked for you, I guess.
Yeah, I had a family, some young children, so.
Excellent. Well, I've admired your work at Capitol Arts Gallery in Jefferson City and on your website. I invite people to tune into that, and we'll be giving that information out in a few moments. Can you share with us, you can, your favorite subject matter, working on a project, shoot? Do you have a favorite?
Well, I'd say anything with the great outdoors is a favorite of mine. You know, I do some commercial work too, but
sure,
because I have people contact me, I do real estate houses, and I do some portraiture and a little bit of everything, some conferences and those types of things. But my really love is the outdoors, and whether it be nature, landscape, macro shots, which are, you know, highly magnified subjects up close that people don't normally see, like an insect inside of a bloom.
Ant, a nice
view
of a frog, a small frog.
Right.
I think I've seen some of those that you've put on.
But then wildlife in general, I think, is even when it comes to all outdoors, wildlife is even the top of that list because of the more difficult subject and having to anticipate how to have the camera set up and to know what that animal's going to do to try and get the shot. Because, you know, anybody can take a picture of a bird sitting there looking like a bird, but to get it flying or calling or feeding or courting, those are the ones that I really enjoy doing, which it's hard to plan for. You have to be ready.
Exactly, and that's a viewer would definitely be looking for those shots over and above all others. Oh, that sounds so interesting. I still find myself taking those shots every time I get. I had a locust, as we call them, was coming out of the chrysalis. It just came out, was sitting on top one morning when I got up to take care of business on the yard, in the yard, and here it was. So I still use that camera to my interest and others, I hope. Well, as you know, I've partnered with the Runge Conservation Nature Center in Jefferson City, Missouri, for an exhibit for all my Mid-Missouri art news and the spotlight on the art guests, exclusively this coming May through June 2018. I thank you for agreeing to be a part of that exhibit at the Runge, joining me and others from around the state in this exhibit. You are a volunteer at the Department of Conservation Runge Center, so you know more about this probably than I. And also recognized as a Missouri master naturalist with the Lake of the Ozarks chapter, as my research serves me. Can you describe what inspired you to fill such positions, and a little bit about what duties you at this time carry out in those positions?
Well, first of all, the first thing that I joined in those two was Runge Nature Center as a volunteer naturalist. I did that in spring of 2015, and you volunteer 24 hours every 2 months. That's what they ask you to try and meet.
I see.
And I generally do some children's programs on Saturdays where they're learning about a certain part of nature. I did that during the holiday happenings during our recent holiday period. And then, but predominantly what I do is I lead hikes.
Oh, excellent.
There's a group of us that lead the public on a hike, and we make it pretty much a whole day. There's actually 2 hike groups. There's a Wednesday and a Saturday. I help with the Saturday group. So we go and pre-hike an area, make sure we know there's open trails and where we're going for sure before we ever take the public. And we pick them up at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning and take them there, and they pack their lunch.
And that could be any place in Missouri, I understand.
Yeah, within driving distance,
Within
that
driving
you can get back by 5 o'clock. So
excellent. Well,
sometimes we'll drive a couple hours, but usually something less
And
than
do you
that.
take the camera with you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, excellent.
Now, I don't carry, I have different ones. I carry a small camera because I'm predominantly working for conservation, so the care of the hikers is first.
But it doesn't hurt to get in a good shot once in a while.
No, I carry it with me.
Excellent. Now, also, I remember you speaking of being on the Jefferson City Council at one time. And can you give us an idea of when they might have recognized you in the past?
Yeah, that was the last time I was in here on camera. It was I don't know when it was. I was councilman from 1992 to 94.
Excellent.
And I always say my claim to fame was I was fortunate enough to be a councilman during the Great Flood.
Oh, during the Great Flood.
So that was a tough time for lots of people. My phone rang off the wall just about. So.
But you was a service there to the community, even on that basis.
And that was a difficult time, but made it through it.
So you should be commended from the Spotlight on the Arts standpoint for your service to the Run Center and also to the community here of Jefferson City, Missouri at one time. And I'm sure that's still ingrained. If the duty calls, you'll be there at some point, in some manner.
You asked about the Master Naturalist too, Rick. That's
yes.
I went through that in 16, I guess, and that's a class. They're getting ready to start another one in Camdenton. They do it every couple of years, and you go through it. It's only a 40-hour commitment per year, but you do different things. I volunteer. I was down there last Saturday for Eagle Days at Lake of the Ozarks. That's one of the things that chapter participates in. But the advantage to both of these, to me, aside from being a service to the community, is the more I learn about nature from the other naturalists,
yes,
the staff at Conservation, which are a great group of people, the more I learn from them, the better outdoor photographer I come. So, so it's a matter of, I give, but I take too.
Exactly. So that's awesome that you actually are kind of cued in by those people, more experienced in what to look for, in the sense. That's the way I would look at it also. Well, Dan, did you have something?
Well, I was going to make the comment. I told you in 06 when I fell in love with Yellowstone, that's what got me started. But that 10-year-old granddaughter that was with me, my wife and I that year, when she was looking at my pictures in the motel room after a day, she'd say, "Grandpa, how come you're always getting rear end shots?" And I hadn't really thought about it, that I was always getting them fleeting. So hopefully today I'm getting them coming towards me.
So you have improved in your works. Well, Dan, we must take a break, so hang with me. After the break, we learn more from Mr. Dan Bernskaetter and learn about how he arrives at a project theme and how he brings it together, his state-of-the-art equipment, more on that, and any techniques that he would like to share with you and I. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
And so the king ordered his men into battle, and even though he was no longer acting in their best interest, they followed obediently. But what if they didn't? What if they just refused? What if selfish leaders got no support? What if people had the courage to stand up when something wasn't right? What if the government didn't just serve a lucky few? What if it was designed and run for all the people, no matter what race, color, or creed? What if we didn't put up with anything less? What if?
Welcome back, everyone. We continue now with my special guest today, photographer Dan Bernskaetter of Lowman, Missouri, who is here with us today to share the highlights of his love for the art of photography. It's all here, you know, on Spotlight on the Arts, a special feature of Mid-Missouri Art News. Well, Dan, turning back to you, you've shared so much before the break. Now I'd like to ask you to try and answer a couple of questions more in depth for our viewers that have asked me to approach you about. The first is, how do you arrive at a project idea? What seems to inspire you in that quest? What gets you to load the camera and keys in the car and head out?
Well, I'd say that I kind of play it by ear. When I get up in the morning, if I've got a day that I can devote to a day of photography, I'll just decide almost spur of the moment.
I see.
I mean, I know of a lot of areas to go because I've done it a long time, but sometimes it's in my own backyard. It may not even be driving somewhere, or it may be to another state, which is a few trips like that.
So you go with your feeling, and basically the feeling, and that which a lot of us have. When we get up, we never know sometimes if we're free of the worldly things that we just take out on our own.
You know, I'm a fairly
quest.
spiritual person, and so I'll say a prayer. I say my prayers every morning, and when I do that, I ask God to just lead me that day, whether it's photography or whatever I'm doing.
Excellent.
So in many cases, He just puts something in front of me that I just would have never expected.
You know, that's the truth. The closer we walk with our faith, we have that. It seems like we have that connection that He strives us to look at through our lives, and whatever creator being you are tuned into, should we say. And so I can understand that from even my standpoint and identifying with that. Well, also you have a blind in your backyard, I understand, overlooking a pond off of Sea Highway, so you definitely have a getaway spot where you don't have to go very far.
Yeah, I've sat out in the woods before, but I've since learned that you get so much better natural acting of the animals if they don't know you're there. Now, a lot of them do know you're there, but it's not the same as when you're exposed. So I've used portable blinds, pop-up blinds for years. It's like a tent that's camoed. But a year and a half, soon 2 years ago, I built this building. And it's about 5 by 8 foot inside, and it's built on skids. And I can pull it around with either a tractor or my Ranger and put it where I want it and then sit in it and be able to move around a little bit. Matter of fact, my yellow lab gunner likes to sit right at my feet in the building while I'm photographing wildlife, and he doesn't know it's out there and they don't know he's inside.
So that makes it, companionship is really great. I can identify with that. Once you get used to them at your feet, no matter what you're doing, especially if it's an outdoor canine, it's nice to have them along. Well, that's excellent. Now let's dig a little deeper. Can you step us through the steps that you use once you have the idea in your psyche? Let's say from the conception to the final presentation of a piece, is there a certain pattern I'm sure you have to shoot, you have to, second step, third step, phase, what have you?
Yeah, I generally go out, take the shoot. I shoot in RAW, which means whatever that Canon camera or Nikon or they have a RAW format. I never shoot in JPEG because JPEG is compressed and you lose data. So I always shoot in RAW. Most camera club people understand what I'm talking about. If not, you can Google it. Because you have so much exposure, and now you still got to get a sharp picture. You can't fix focus problems, but then I bring those pictures in, I edit them by pick and choosing the ones I want based on what I got. I can kind of even change my story based on what that animal did.
That's what I was getting at also. There's a story theme going in through your psyche already, and so you have to build into that.
Right.
Please go ahead.
I usually have a little bit of that thought up front initially, but that can change based on what I see in nature.
And maybe a surprise.
Yeah, oh yes, many times, most of the time.
Most of the time.
Many times I come up with a little bit different slant than I had ever planned on doing based on what I saw while I was out there.
Excellent.
So then I edit those pictures, pick out the ones I want to tell that story, and then go in and edit and fine tune them.
Which gives you that freedom and to really come up with some great work. And again, I'll endorse his work. It's, if you ever get a chance to see it, it's all around town here in the state. So look for Dan's work at some of the local venues here, even in Jeff City. Well, Spotlight on the Arts attempts to inspire our viewers in their own quests. In this case, maybe photography. Do you have a few words that you could share that might inspire a beginner or even one who would like to expand his photography skills? A starter camera with moving on up to a Canon Rebel DSLR with a Sigma zoom lens or what have you?
Yeah, I have people ask me that question all the time about equipment. And of course, I recommend Canon because if they come and ask a question, I can answer it. Nikon, Canon, Pentax, Sony, they all make great products.
Yes.
But I know Canon, so I'll recommend to a beginner or starting person like a Rebel type camera. Of course, it was just one Rebel back then. Now I think they're up to a T6 or T7i or something, you know, that's more advanced. Just a kit lens that comes with it just to get a feel for it. And then I do offer some classes from time to time for people wanting to learn how to manually operate one.
Yes.
One of the issues with these cameras is they are worked so well automated that a lot of people never take them off auto.
Oh my.
But I never shoot auto.
Oh, I see.
And the reason being is I want to manipulate that image to show what I want it, what I'm feeling, I want my viewer to see.
Based on your experience, now one inexperienced, I guess you're basically giving them the license to go ahead and take it off of and experiment a little bit because on manual. So they may come up with something they never dreamed of.
Right, and you're going to ruin a lot of shots, but that's part of the learning process.
Okay.
If you never make any errors, you can never learn anything.
Exactly.
You know, if you get one that's totally black or totally white and you can't figure out your exposure, you can figure that out pretty quick. When I mentioned that first SLR that I bought, it was a Yashica, totally manual. It didn't have anything automatic, so the only way you could take pictures was know what you're doing. Oh. And at the price of film back in 1980 till 2006, it got to be pretty expensive if you just kept ruining pictures.
I can imagine, yes.
So the whole key of that, my point is, you've got to keep doing it daily or weekly, you know, on a regular basis, and you'll learn. You just got to push yourself.
Well, for Uncle Sam, I was stationed in Japan, but I worked the whole Far East area, and I was fortunate to pick up through the military in Japan a Canon camera. I can't remember the model now, but it was a step from the Canon Hawkeye. I mean, from the Brownie Hawkeye at 12 years old in let's see, what would be about 1960. Well, it's about 56, I guess. So back in the service in '66. It was quite an advancement. I had so much fun just experimenting, even sending a picture of my foot home to mom, you know. That was, I can remember that, and they may too. Well, it appears your travels and those photos taken that I've viewed have revealed some awesome prints. Do you have any fond memories of any place or subject matter that you really could call a favorite?
I'd have to say Yellowstone would be my favorite. It's the one that caught me up in this whole thing in nature photography.
Awesome.
I've been back twice. I went in the fall of 2010 because I was on an elk hunt with some guys and I didn't have a license, so I was photographing them, and then when their hunt started I went up there by myself and spent a couple days, and then I went back in February of 11 with temperatures between 0 and 20 degrees for 4 days.
Oh my.
And it's the only time I've been on a photo shoot where I paid another photographer to go on the shoot. And I did it because of the opportunity. And I learned some things from this lady about handling the data. In other words, how to handle pictures and catalog them and keep track of them. I did learn that from her. But to be in Yellowstone in winter in those extreme temperatures with all the snow, it was unbelievable.
And that would be like a painted canvas with all the melting snow and the ice and formations.
Steam off of the geysers. And
the geysers. Oh, yes, I can identify. I can picture it now. Now, we're showing some of your photos as we speak during the whole conversation that we're having. So let people take a close look at those. Well, everyone has those favorites. Could you identify those that we'd like to see really brought up during our conversation that really means something to you? There's a specific shot in Yellowstone.
Oh, I would say in the 4 days in Yellowstone, we went 3+ days and didn't have anything but snow and cold and overcast. Ooh. And so I had a flight out at midday on this last day. And we were headed, I forget what, we were in the northern part of Yellowstone, and just as we were heading, I think we were heading east, the sun started to come out finally from behind the clouds. So we convinced our instructor to go back to Mammoth Springs, which she turned the rig around and we went there. And just as that sky was getting blue and all that steam, because it had been 10 degrees most that morning, and it was up to about 15. I got pictures of the steam or water vapor coming off of Mammoth Springs with all the bushes laden in, it looks like snow and ice, but it was actually the steam water because it was so cold clinging to the plants. And that, I've got that hanging in my living room. That's probably my favorite photo.
That really takes you back to Yellowstone at a time when most you basically had to wait for that specific time.
That's why part of my issue with this is you can't go about planning your day totally. You just, you get handed it in nature.
Well, let's see, we're getting running close on time. So do you have any photo shoots now in process that our viewers may look for in the future? Or are you active right now with your presentations of your work at any location where our viewers may take a look? Have you got a venue where you're going to be showing?
I don't have anything scheduled right now except for a couple pieces I'm going to have at the Runge Nature Center with part of the arts, Capitol Arts. So
Capitol Arts?
That's about all I have planned right now.
Let's see, so the Capitol Arts you're going to be showing there?
No, I mean with the group from the Capitol Arts group that'll be at Runge is what I meant.
Oh, there's a presentation that Mid-Missouri Art News.
I think there's going to.
So there's another one from Capitol Arts, I guess you're speaking of.
No, I was actually speaking of the one that you're talking about through
Now, we're separate from Capitol Arts, but we definitely work with them closely, and Leanne Porello will be my guest here in the very, very near future. So, yes, it's the Spotlight on the Arts called Call to Nature is the theme of that show at the Runge Center. And we'll be delivering on April 30th, and it'll run through May and June, and the art will come down on July 2nd. And there's 51 people so far that'll be exhibiting at that show at the Runge. And Dan will be one of them. So it's going to be from, you name it, it's going to be there, from quilting to photography, to sculptural work, to oils, to watercolors. It's everyone that you've seen on the programs in the last year or scheduled for this year, 2018, is going to be part of that show. Well, we're about out of time, so I want to say on behalf of Spotlight on the Arts and JCTV, thanks again, Dan. I sure appreciate you being here with us.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Well, next on Spotlight in the Arts, you'll be hearing from entertainer Hambo Latham, who's toured this world and entertained troops and folks, shall we say, as they say in the Ozarks, locally and all over the world, still continues today and getting up there in age. But Hambo Latham will be taped here on February 14th. I talked to Hambo about 3 nights ago. He's looking forward to it. And you want to tune in to learn more about Hambo Latham. It's kind of a Bob Hope wannabe in his life, you might say. Well, our next featured guest then on Mid-Missouri, Art News, are artist Carol Norton of Lewis and Clark Norton, driving down 50 Highway. They live on that property. And Steve Gorman of Kansas City, Missouri metro area, a sculptor, displaying some of the most fantastic sculpture you'll ever see. So that program is scheduled for January 17th. Well, my thanks goes out to JCTV producer Gloria Enlow and camera crew, Jimmy Mustian. And I thank you, our viewers, for joining us. Look for more Spotlight on the Arts right here at JCTV. Oh, and don't forget YouTube. I'm Rick Jey saying, see you next time.